Hello, this is Gloomy Sunday, and once again, I will be sharing spooky stories that will send shivers down your thorny spine. Without further ado, let's begin tonight's creepy, spooky, and sometimes outlandish array of tales. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. The air crackled with a dangerous energy, thick and heavy with the scent of jasmine and desperation. Vashti stared at her reflection in the antique mirror, her face a canvas of fear and regret. The curse she'd cast on Paxson, the man she loved, was a monster she'd unleashed. It started innocently enough. A moment of jealousy, a whispered wish fueled by insecurity. "Let him only see me." The words, a desperate plea, had slithered into the night, carrying with them a malevolent power. Paxson, once a man who saw the world in shades of grey, now viewed it in black and white, with her as the sole source of colour. His eyes, once filled with a playful twinkle, now burned with an all-consuming obsession. He wanted her, all of her, not just her love, but her very essence. He showered her with affection, suffocating her with his constant presence. Every glance, every touch, was a possessive act, a reminder of his unwavering devotion, a burden she couldn't bear. His gaze, once a beacon of warmth, now felt like a vice tightening around her throat. The whispers started at first, faint, insidious. "He's changed," her friends would say, their voices laced with concern. "He doesn't seem like himself." At first, Vashti dismissed their worries, clinging to the hope that the change was temporary, a distorted version of the love they shared. But the truth was too brutal to ignore. Paxson's love had morphed into a twisted, possessive monster. Every day, the line between love and madness blurred until it disappeared altogether. He followed her everywhere, his presence a constant shadow lurking by her side. He grew jealous of her friends, her family, even the air she breathed. The final straw came on a rainy afternoon. Vashti, exhausted and terrified, found herself trapped in her own home, Paxson's shadow looming over her, his eyes a pool of manic affection. He held a photograph in his hand, a picture of her from years ago, a memory he had unearthed from her past. "You were so beautiful then," he breathed, his voice a venomous caress. "But now, you've grown dull, you've faded." His words were a chilling reminder of his warped reality, a world where love had become a suffocating obsession, a prison with no escape. In that moment, Vashti realized the curse she'd cast was a curse in its truest form. She had damned them both. She had to escape, but how? As he moved closer, his touch a burning brand on her skin, an idea formed in the desperation of her heart. She closed her eyes, her mind racing, and focused on the power within her, the power that had unleashed this monster. "Let him see again," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Let him see the world, let him see the beauty beyond me." As the words left her lips, the world shifted. Paxson stumbled back, his eyes flickering, regaining their dull grey hue. The fire in his gaze dimmed, replaced by a flicker of confusion. He no longer saw her as an object of obsession, but as a person. He saw Vashti, in all her flaws and imperfections, and for a moment, the world was right again. But the curse had left its mark. He would never fully understand the horror he had inflicted, the darkness he had embraced. And Vashti would forever bear the scars of her own desperate wish, a constant reminder of the cost of love twisted by fear. They were both forever changed, tethered by the chilling consequence of their misguided love. There is a saying that goes, "If you love them, set them free. If they are truly yours, they will return." I think it is better to just cut your losses than to force others to love you. We all deserve better. Now let's move on to the next story. On June 5th, 2001 at exactly 3:22 a.m., I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. I had morning sickness the entire pregnancy. I gained only 11 pounds, which put me in the high-risk category. Needless to say, her birth didn't go as planned. I was induced into labor at 36 weeks because she had stopped growing. Thankfully, after 4 hours of labor, I delivered a surprisingly healthy baby. 3 hours after delivery, I started hemorrhaging severely. My blood pressure dropped dangerously low. My husband and I were told if the bleeding didn't stop within the next few hours, I would have to have surgery. My nurse, whom we will call Lucilla for this story, began giving me shots of Pitocin every 30 minutes. After 2 shots, nothing had changed. I couldn't focus, everything was surreal. I guess because of my low blood pressure. I remember thinking I was going to die, but I was very calm. Lucilla came in to let me know her shift would be over soon, but someone else would come in to give me shots. She was the attending delivery nurse for 3 of my elder children. She promised to come check in on me the next morning. It was 6 o'clock in the evening when the new nurse came to my room. Her name tag read Celestina. I don't remember seeing a last name on her tag. She was a short lady, about 5 feet. She had long white hair and beautiful grey eyes. She had a soft, comforting voice unlike anything I've ever heard before or since. I rolled over to my side thinking she was there to give me my next shot, even though moments before I could not lift my arms because I was so weak. She said,
"Oh, honey, I'm not giving you a shot. You don't need another one. You're going to be just fine."
She stood next to my bed smiling and rubbing my legs for a few minutes. I looked towards my husband, intending on asking him if he heard what she had said. He was laying in a chair sound asleep. I looked at the clock, it read 6:05. She smiled at me, patted my leg, turned towards the door, then she was gone. I didn't see her walk out the door, she just sort of vanished. I thought I might have fallen to sleep before she left the room and then woke up shortly afterwards, but I looked at the clock, it read 6:06. I again looked over at my husband, in hopes he would acknowledge she had really been in the room, but he was still sleeping. I tried to wake him by calling his name. He didn't hear me. I picked up a thermometer from the bedside table and threw it at him. It landed on his chest. He didn't wake up. At that moment a nurse, whom we will call Emmanuel, walked into the room carrying the familiar needle with her. I told her I didn't need any more Pitocin. That's what the last nurse had told me. She said she was my only nurse for the night. She questioned me about the other nurse. What did she look like? Did I know her name? She looked over at the empty bassinet at the foot of my bed. She asked if my baby was in the nursery, to which I replied yes. I saw the relief wash over her face. She told me she would be back in a minute and quickly rushed out the door. A short time later, I saw her standing at my door along with 2 other nurses. They were whispering and looking in at me. Finally, they all walked into the room and came over to my bed. One nurse looked to be in her mid-20s. I cannot for the life of me remember her name. The other was surely in her 50s. Her name was Dorinda. They started to fire questions at me so rapidly it frightened me. All I could think was the lady was probably trying to kidnap my little girl. The noise of me demanding to see our baby woke my husband up. To this day, he swears he doesn't remember falling to sleep. He says he remembers sitting down in the chair, wondering why the room was suddenly freezing. The next thing he remembers, there were nurses in the room. I was demanding very loudly to see our baby and he was holding a thermometer. They assured me my baby was in the nursery. Nurse Dorinda told the younger nurse to bring my daughter, Pollyanna, to me. As we waited, Nurse Dorinda took my blood pressure. She turned to Nurse Emmanuel and told her to put away the syringe and call my doctor. I wouldn't be needing that shot. She then pulled a chair next to my bed and sat down. The young nurse walked in carrying my baby. She placed her in my arms and walked out of the room. Nurse Dorinda pulled up a chair and sat down next to my bed. She sat there smiling as I looked Pollyanna over. She asked if Pollyanna was my first baby. When I replied fourth, she asked about my older children. Just as I was sure she was about to tell me something important, my doctor came in. When my doctor came in, he started in with his own questions, but mostly they were directed at Nurse Dorinda. When Nurse Dorinda explained it to him, he smiled and said, "Okay then." He checked me over, told me he was simply amazed at my recovery. He said even the color had come back into my face. He stood there staring at me for a minute or so, then suddenly he asked if I was hungry, to which I replied starving. He told me he would order a pizza on his way out. After he left, Nurse Dorinda said, "I've never talked to anyone who Celestina has visited." She looked closely at my face as if she was trying to decide whether she should keep talking or not. I silently stared back at her because I knew. I don't know how or why I knew, but I knew. Her story was that Celestina had been a nurse on the maternity floor years ago. Nurse Dorinda said, "The story I've heard is that Celestina got called into work one stormy night. She never made it here. The rumors are that she sometimes visits the new moms. All the descriptions of her are the same." Nurse Dorinda silently looked down at the floor. I remember thinking she was saying a prayer. Then she shook her head and said, "Who am I to question these things?" I wanted to question her to find out more, but I could tell she had said all she was going to. She rose from the chair, patted my leg, winked and said, "They say she only visits special people." The next day, to everyone's surprise, I was released from the hospital in excellent health. As my husband and I walked down the corridor with our baby daughter, we could feel everyone's eyes on us. Some were whispering, others were just staring. Perhaps they were thinking I was a lunatic, or maybe they were wondering, why her? This story is a special part of me. I know that night, I experienced something most people never do. For that I am extremely grateful. Growing up, my daughters loved this story. Especially Pollyanna. When other kids would say things such as, "I weighed 10 pounds at birth," Pollyanna would proudly say, "I almost killed my mom." The story is not really that scary, but it makes you feel good. I would like to think that not all ghosts are malevolent and spiteful. Some are kept in those worlds to help the living. I hope you enjoyed our spooky and strange stories. Join us next time for more. Take care and boo-bye.